Tonight, we track a world in the midst of a great decoupling. In Germany, the Munich Security Conference is underway, but the atmosphere is less alliance and more self-reliance. As the Trump administration makes it a priority, America first, cyber policies, and questions the very core of collective defense, Europe and Canada are facing a hard truth. The era of the United States security guarantee may be over. Is the Europeanization of NATO a strategic masterstroke or a desperate reaction to a wrecking ball presidency? Meanwhile, in Washington, Attorney General Bondi just turned a routine oversight hearing into a political cage match. Refusing to answer questions on the Epstein files, Bondi instead lobbed personal insults at the lawmakers and brandished what critics are calling her burn book. While Republicans cheer her warrior spirit, Democrats believe this combative performance is exactly what they needed to win back the House in the 2026 midterms. I'm Rana Qassas, and this is In Focus. The signs at Munich Airport aren't talking about transatlantic unity this year. They're talking about sovereign European tech, from autonomous drone partnerships to the United Kingdom and Italy taking over US naval commands. The rebalancing of NATO is no longer a suggestion, it's a reality. But as we see in the bizarre El Paso Fiasco, where the FAA and the CBP apparently mistook a party balloon for a cartel drone, the lack of coordination in Washington is making allies very nervous. Joining us from Brussels is Nicholas Williams, a former NATO official, to discuss the European defense renaissance. Welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us in this very special episode of In Focus, and it's a pleasure to have you with us. Mr. Nicholas, so we're seeing German firms like Helsing and others pushing purely national technology. Is Europe finally building a defense renaissance out of necessity, or is this just a way to hedge against an unpredictable White House?
Yes, thank you, Rana, and it's a pleasure to be with you. I think it's both. The EU has a host of initiatives in order to build up the European defense industry, and it's giving long-term loans for defense industry, European defense industry, at reasonable rates of interest in order to kickstart in this new era the European defense industry. But you can't make a European defense just by a European defense industry. It needs European command, European military, and a European organization. And the as you call it, the Europeanization of NATO is an attempt to move in that direction. But it's an attempt to move in the direction, but it's still controlled and led. The NATO military structure is still controlled and led by the United States. So it's a shift in responsibility, but not in American control.
A shift in responsibility, but not in American control. Sir, last year, J.D. Vance lectured Munich on defense burdens. This year, Undersecretary Elbridge Colby told NATO that Europe must assume primary responsibility. Is the United States successfully offloading its security costs, or is it losing its seat at the head of the table?
Uh, yes, it's offloading what it considers to be an unfair share of the burden of defending Europe. The Americans have always exaggerated how much they spend on European defense. The Europeans spending about almost $500 billion a year in defense. So the Americans always exaggerate and always claim that the Europeans are doing very little or even nothing.
The United States always blames the European Union of doing nothing.
Yes, or being totally weak and dependent on the United States. Whereas, as I say, the Europeans annually spend about $500 billion on defense, and it's set to rise.
Sir, retired General Richard Sharif says Trump's threats toward Denmark and Greenland blew a hole through collective defense. How can Article 5 be taken seriously if the leader of the alliance targets the territory of its own members?
Well, the general is right. The Greenland incident, or the threat to Greenland, was the single most shocking indication that the United States didn't care for European sovereignty and would not be reliable in the event of a European defense emergency.
Sir, could you elaborate more about Greenland? I think that the United States is backing away from the idea of taking Greenland and plus backing away, of course, from NATO and Ukraine and what's happening in the European Union as a whole.
Well, NATO, with the agreement of the American military, have launched a plan and a strategy to defend Greenland more effectively and more coherently. So Trump did have the effect of spurring NATO to do more in Greenland. And so no one knows whether he's backed off his desire to occupy and annex Greenland. But I think the Europeans, the shock of the Europeans made itself effective and known in Washington. And that's why I think he backed off, because he didn't actually realize that he was turning the Europeans against him and turning the Europeans into a sort of coherent force against the United States.
Perfect, sir. The 2026 Munich Security Report explicitly names President Trump as the primary axe to international rules. How do European diplomats negotiate with a partner that the official conference report labels as a destroyer?
Well, I think that the Europeans have learned to their cost that you can't persuade Trump of anything once his mind is fixed and made up. They've spent a year trying to persuade Trump to take their opinions and policies into account in relation to Ukraine, but Trump is negotiating with Russia over the heads and behind the backs of the Europeans. So it's pointless. What the Europeans are doing at the moment is trying to appease Trump by rhetoric, but buying time and hedging their bets in the long term. And so
why
that's
are they buying time, sir?
Well, because they can't risk a sudden turbulence in NATO before they've got their acts together in terms of
Any
having a
turbulence in
plan.
NATO, sorry to interrupt you, any turbulence in NATO, the reason will be US President Donald Trump.
Yes, of course, turbulence in NATO.
And any
as a
hedging, he
result
will
of,
be the reason as well.
yes, as a result of Trump's arbitrary decisions to withdraw American troops, to withdraw American commanders. And so they want to appease Trump, but buy time in order to effect a proper Europeanization of NATO, which may take until 2030 or even beyond.
Sir, retired General Paul Nakasone warned that decoupling in cyberspace is high risk. If the US stops sharing intel to make America first a priority, who fills that vacuum in the European theater, China or a new European cyber command?
The problem is that one of the areas of dominance in NATO is American intelligence capabilities. And there's no one that can replace the United States. And the UK has an arrangement called Five Eyes with the United States, which actually gives the UK lots of knowledge, and it's reciprocal, but they cannot share it with their European partners or share the level of detail of the intelligence.
Why, sir?
Because it's an agreement that it's and there
it has to be secretive?
Yes, it's an agreement and procedures to keep the sharing of intelligence secret among what they call the Five Eyes community. So the UK cannot give certain types of intelligence to their European partners. The French and the Germans have, of course, European capabilities in intelligence, but not to the extent of the eavesdropping or the cyber capabilities the UK and the Americans have.
Sir, even at the Olympics, the tension is visible. A Ukrainian athlete was disqualified for helmet honoring war victims. Is the neutrality of international institutions from the IOC to NATO becoming impossible to maintain in 2026, or in other words, in the era of US President Donald Trump?
Well, people are being, institutions are being forced to choose, but I think the IOC decision is consistent with all its precedents to object to and ban all signs of political symbols. But NATO is, with difficulty, trying to steer a middle line between the United States and Europe in terms of keeping the whole show on the ground.
So NATO is trying its best to keep the United States and Europe aligned together as much as possible.
Of course, and it's in NATO's interest because there wouldn't be.
Or, in other words, sir, NATO has no other choice after what you said.
Exactly, no other choice because the United States.
Because of the intelligence.
Intelligence, what they call enablers, air defense, for example. The Europeans have been lacking in their air defense. They can't defend themselves, their cities, their towns, their boundaries against Russian missiles.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. I couldn't thank you enough for your time, intellectual knowledge, and informative knowledge, and in-depth analysis I really appreciate your existence in today's interview. The wrecking ball politics described in this week's Munich Security Report found a vivid domestic echo today on Capitol Hill, where the Attorney General traded the usual restraint of her office for a series of personal broadsides, turning a legal oversight hearing into a high-octane preview of the 2026 midterms. It was 4 hours of fireworks. Attorney General Pam Bondi didn't just defend the DOJ. She went on the offensive, calling Jamie Raskin a loser lawyer and dismissing Thomas Massey as a failed politician. For Democrats, it was a display of disrespect for Congress that they hope to ride to a 2026 majority. For the White House, it was a performance for an audience of one, Donald Trump. And from Washington, we are joined by Mr. Peter Roth, contributing editor at Newsweek, joins us to analyze the fallout of the Bondi hearing. A very warm welcome, sir, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today in Focus. Mr. Peter, Bondi seemed less like a prosecutor and more like a political candidate. Is her aggressive posture a sign that the Trump administration no longer feels it needs to cooperate with oversight as a concept?
Well, thanks for having me.
Always.
Sorry you caught me clearing out my phone messages. Look, Donald Trump is an aggressive president. He expects his cabinet secretaries to be aggressive, not deferential. That's part of defending the authority of the presidency. That's part of defending the authority of the Article 2 branch of government. And so I am not at all surprised to see Attorney General Bondi having been as combative on Capitol Hill as she was. I think that's a winner with the White House, even if it makes other Republicans uncomfortable. And as far as Bondi's concerned, the White House is the only audience that she needs to impress.
Sir, Republican Thomas Massey, the lone Republican to challenge her, accused her of sloppy and illegal radication in the Epstein files. Why is the DOJ protecting specific names even after a law was passed compelling their release, sir?
Okay, there are a lot of reasons that some of the files haven't been released. And some of them, frankly, are good reasons. People don't really understand how all this works. The first reason is that they can't release files that relate to ongoing investigations. People have rights. They are presumed innocent until proven guilty in
Sir, can I interrupt you here and ask you that they do not have they have the right not to release investigations that are taking place, but at least headlines for the public and for the Congress and for everyone, just for the idea of the visibility and the idea of everyone knowing what's happening on the ground.
Well, this gets to the second part of what I was going to say.
I'm very sorry, sir.
There may be documents that were collected during the early part of the investigation that in no way illuminate the truth of what happened, but only add to the sizzle, the scandal, unreliable interviewees, allegations made to the FBI or to the police by people who had an axe to grind against someone else. I mean, the only thing that I found new in the latest release of the Epstein documents that I didn't know was that in 2006, President Trump called the FBI and said, this guy Epstein is doing a lot of bad stuff. So in fact, Trump, rather than being a co-conspirator and guilty party, may actually have been a whistleblower.
Which year was this, sir?
2006.
2006. Okay, sir, she literally flipped through a binder of insults and researching the committee members. Does this counter-punching style actually win over swing voters, or does it just harden the existing partisan divide?
It hardens the divide. The Trump administration isn't interested in winning over swing voters. I think in part because they don't think there are any swing voters, and they may be right. The number of split ticket voters has steadily declined since 2000, when George W. Bush narrowly won the presidency from Al Gore. What the Trump people are trying to do, and this makes sense, guaranteed voters. They are trying to turn their people out, each party, in bigger numbers. You saw that in a lot of the special elections, at least among Democrats. I don't think that in most of the special elections that we've seen in the United States over the last year, you've seen the Republicans put a lot of effort into winning them because they either knew they were going to win or they knew they were going to lose, and there wasn't a lot of need to fight for them. The one exception is a seat outside Nashville, Tennessee. Everything else, there's no reason to put a lot of effort into a race you don't know you're likely to lose that isn't going to expand your control of a majority someplace. So, for example, everybody was talking about that state Senate seat in Texas that the Democrats won by 20 points, that Trump had won by 20 points, as this was some kind of big indication, except that the Texas legislature isn't even coming into session. At least it isn't scheduled to come into session before this guy's term is up. So he'll be a senator in name only, never have a chance to introduce legislation, never have to cast a vote. Why spend money on a race like that unless you're interested only in the bragging rights?
Sir, the Democrats were always the winners, and they were always on top of what was happening in the United States. However, today, the Republicans are the ones that are leading in the Congress. Under the leadership of, quoting you, sir, an aggressive U.S. president, which is Donald Trump, and for the sake of U.S. President Donald Trump, has diplomacy, sir, in general, changed into another means or another way of treating or dealing when we come to discuss anything on the ground, any concrete, controversial, any problem that's taking place, we start insulting people and we start insulting members in the Congress? Is this normal?
Well, the question here about the insults, did Bondi fire first or did Bondi fire back? I think you'd make an argument that she fired back. And she fired back in front of the committee what people have been saying about her to reporters. Is that a strategy I would have recommended? No. Is it a legitimate strategy? Yeah, I suppose it is. People are allowed to go in front of congressional committees and be tough and push back and not be deferential. You don't see it often. It might be better for the system, frankly, if you did see a little bit more often, because a lot of these committee members aren't using these televised hearings to gather information. They're using these hearings to get that 30-second soundbite that will add another 100,000 followers to their social media accounts and help them generate some money into their campaign coffers. Republicans do this too. It's part of what social media has done.
Mr. Thomas, sorry to interrupt you, and I know you don't like interruption, but Pam
Oh, it's your
Bondi,
show. Go ahead.
Pam Bondi was the one that insulted first.
Well, in the hearing, yes, but she has been the target of their attacks and insults well before she
Overall,
sat
you
down.
mean?
I'm sorry?
You mean before that, sir? Before this?
Before the hearing started, she has been attacked by members of Congress in the news, in social media. This was her opportunity to respond to them to their faces. She didn't attack them back over X or Instagram. She waited until she was in front of them to engage Massey and Raskin and the other people who've been saying such nasty things about him. I'm not defending it, but I'm also not attacking it. I wonder about its successfulness, its usefulness as a political strategy. I know, though, that the president likes to see his appointees fighting, and he likes to see them fighting back because they think they're fighting for his agenda. They're not rolling over. And if her constituency is just the president of the United States as a political matter, and I think you can argue that it is, she really shouldn't be cared about what the American people think about what she's doing. Then she handled it correctly. Whether that causes damage to the Republican Party and to the Trump administration, well, that's the president's problem to handle. He's the face of the party. He's the leader of the party. And the same thing was true when Biden was president. Anything his appointees did on Capitol Hill, he had to bear the brunt of the public reaction. He was responsible for it. He had to manage it.
Okay, 10 of Epstein's victims were in the room. Bondi said she was deeply sorry but refused to meet with them or even give an apology for the DOJ's handling of the files. How does that play in suburban districts where justice and order are key issues, sir?
Well, I think when you personalize it down to the level of the victims, I think it plays badly from a political sense. I, however, am upset that politicians are using the victims as props in what really is a political war to bring down Donald Trump. I think these women are being exploited. I think they're hungry for justice that they feel they were denied. And by parading them in front of the country in this hearing room to score political points, I really think does them a disservice. I don't think it helps them get justice. I think it helps them feel further marginalized. And I wonder about the common sense of the politicians behind that. The ones who said, let's have them in the hearing room. The Attorney General is supposed to be a neutral party here. She's supposed to be the chief prosecutor, the head of the Justice Department, not the president's lawyer, as the Democrats consistently remind them. If she's apologizing to the victims the victims alleged or otherwise of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, how can we trust her to be independent, open-minded, as she oversees the people who are conducting whatever investigations are continuing? And I have to say, this thing has been kept alive by politics, not by questions of law.
Politics. True, sir. Sir, I want to move on because I have to wrap up. Many observers say she was performing strictly for the president. If Bondi is indeed auditioning for a higher role, what does that mean for the independence of the Justice Department through 2026?
Well, I don't think she's auditioning for a higher role. She's the Attorney General. I don't see what other jobs there are open for her. She's not running for president. She's not running for governor of Florida. People didn't ask questions about Merrick Garland serving serving Joe Biden, or Eric Holder serving Barack Obama. And remember, Eric Holder was cited for contempt of Congress for refusing to cooperate with congressional hearings, and then his own Justice Department decided not to pursue the indictment. That's kind of a conflict of interest, even if he recused himself. But the attorney general is a difficult job. You've got to represent the interests of the United States of America, but you also are responsible to the president who appointed you. I don't want a system where we have cabinet officials or senior government officials who have real power who are not accountable to the president that appointed them.
Then we have to go back, sir, to the era of real politics where no insults, we act professionally and not under showing off for the reason of a president or audition for a president. Mr. Roth, do you want to answer in 10 seconds?
Well, I don't think that that's what she was doing. I don't think she was auditioning for another job, because there isn't another job for her to have.
I did not say another job. I said for the sake of the president.
Well, the president needs to have confidence in his attorney general. And if she's playing up to the cameras to earn his confidence, I can understand that. I don't object to it. I may not endorse it, but I don't object to it either.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Roth, and it's always a pleasure to have you with us in our programs and interviews. Of course, you're our distinguished guest, and thank you very much for your in-depth analysis and your time and informative and intellectual knowledge. Thank you very much for being with us tonight. And tonight we see the same pattern in two different continents, whether it's the sovereign thrones of Europe or the burned books of Washington. The old rules of collaboration and decorum are being rewritten by the reality of wrecking ball politics. In Munich, the world is preparing to defend itself without the United States. In DC, the US is preparing to defend itself from itself. That's In Focus. I'm Rana Qassas. We'll see you tomorrow again.